And please feel free to, excuse yourself, grab some coffee. We have some coffee and pastries outside, and please enjoy that. Our next session is titled Academic Medicine or Private Practice, How to Spend the Rest of Your Life. And our two speakers today will be Dr. Khalique Zahir, who, is he here? Where'd he go? Oh, right there. Who I can tell you is a plastic surgeon here in our area, a former president, past president of IMANA, and I will let him tell you a little bit about his background also, but what I'm excited to tell you about him, and I think we should take a minute to notice, I think Dr. Zahir is probably the first person who's been the president of a large Islamic organization in the United States who was raised here in the United States. And so that either tells you how old I'm getting and where we're heading as a community and the maturity of our community. But we have Dr. Zahir to join us. Please come up on stage. And he is a plastic surgeon and hand surgeon also, and he'll tell us about private practice. And we have, I'm gonna grab a seat now.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then we have Dr. Nouman Imami, who, let me pull up his CV, I'm sorry. He is an ophthalmologist. Sorry, we're top heavy. We're all heavy in ophthalmology today, so please excuse us for that. But Nouman I've known for many years, and he is a glaucoma specialist at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit. He is the chief currently of their glaucoma service. He's also the vice chair of the Department of Ophthalmology's program there. He was also in the past the director of the residency training program. And I'm going to have both of them talk to you a little bit about, Dr. Imami's going to tell us about academic medicine. Dr. Zahir is going to tell us about private practice, and we will take it from there.
You've already covered a little bit about getting into medical schools, getting into residencies, but more practically, ultimately, you spend the rest of your life in practice, and you've got to be happy with that. It doesn't matter how much torture you had as a resident, how much torture you had as a medical student, how much torture you went through in college. How you live the rest of your life with yourself, with your family, with your loved ones, that's probably the most important part of who you are. We spend about 16 years of our life getting into college, into medical school, in through residency, and getting out. And then at the end of it, somebody says, mashallah, and that's it. So you got to plan for the next step. You got to think about where you want to be, what you want to do. And I'll tell you a little about myself. I'm actually I grew up in West Virginia. I went to medical school in North Carolina, Wake Forest. Went to medical school at West Virginia University, went up to Yale and St. Mary's and did my general surgery fellowship for a very long 7 years, and did reconstructive plastic surgery and hand surgery at Vanderbilt University for 2 years, and then suddenly realized, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So where you fall in life is sort of like that in academics as well as private practice. The reason that I mentioned that is that when you make this decision, there are two decisions that we oftentimes make futilely. The first one is getting married, and the second one is picking a place to live. Usually everyone else's input when you get married is more important than your own, and also in your practice of life, everybody else's input about where you live is more important than your own. So those two things are very important. You realize later in your life that maybe you should have thought about that in advance. How do we go to the next one right here? So you've just finished training. Congrats. Mashallah, all the hard work and effort as you've done to get into residency, to get in through your fellowship, to get out is important. Now what do? Well, you got to first thing is pass your boards. Don't put them off. Don't say, you know what, I've been training so hard, the in-service exams were so rough and tough, I'm going to put it off for maybe a year or two, get some little bit more rest for me. No, do it right away. Get it done, get it out of the way, and move forward. Remember, one of the biggest challenges that we have is delaying things. Whenever you have a particular problem, you address it up front and deal with it. After you've passed your boards, get married if you already haven't. All right? One of the biggest challenges we have in our Southeastern Asian community and Middle Eastern community is that we're always waiting to get educated fully before we move to the next step. That doesn't help. There are a lot of bright people out there that need to be married, so don't put yourself in that situation. Do that up front early on in your life so that you can grow in your practice along with your spouse. So you both do things together. It's not just so that you're now an accomplished person and you're all set up and this is the way you do things. So you want to be part of that. And then think about the future of how you're going to do this. So where does the step come along? the most important decision you can make as a healthcare professional is to really come up with, where you want to settle down. I know that Dr. Sharif earlier, as well as Dr. Haq, alluded that you want to think about these things in advance. You really have to think about way in advance. How do you want to spend your life? Not just location, but what do you want to do with your life? Most people decide, I want to do pediatrics, I want to do anesthesia, I want to do emergency medicine, I want to do this or that. You usually don't know. Early on when you're in college, you just know that just becoming a doctor is challenging enough. Then second is going to medical school and becoming a doctor. And then you have to somehow make the decision of what it is that you want to do. I remember for myself personally, I actually had a long list of all the different specialties and subspecialties and started checking them off. Pediatrics, first off the list. Neurosurgery, second off the list. Podiatry and lower extremity surgery, third off the list. Just kept going down. Finally, I realized I'd actually marked almost everything off. And the only thing left was surgery. And when you realize that you want to do surgery, for those of us who are in the surgical world, there's nothing else. Then you'll be able to stay up 160 hours, 180 hours and do what you need to and forget about the other smaller things. The problem in your decision making for where you're going to practice and how you're going to set your goals up as to what you're going to do usually is unfortunately one of those things you do in the last couple of months of your residency. You really haven't thought quite about it because you've been busy taking call, doing what you need to as a resident and your duties as a resident to really realize what you need to do. And so you need to sort of culminate that in your entire training. You have to think about where you want to be and what you want to do, either academics or private practice. Now, what's the difference? Well, Dr. Mami will speak here and also about the same things that I'm speaking about, but I'll give you as it from a private practice perspective. I went into general surgery. Last thing in the world I ever wanted to do was research. I thought I despised researchers as well as research, and you're looking at somebody who's written over 36 articles, spent a year in research. Not by choice, but because that was the design in order to actually get where you need to. There are a lot of things you may not want to do, but you need to do in order to actually matriculate to the next step that you need to get into. I decided I wanted to go into plastic surgery, but a majority of the work I did was not in plastic surgery research. It was close to plastic surgery research. So to answer the question you had earlier about doing externships and are they important, they're not necessarily important for you as far as getting where you need to, but the important thing is that you actually create the environment for other people to realize what you're doing and where you want to go. And that's very helpful. I mean, it's not helpful to them to decide upon you, but it shows diligence. The next important thing that you have to think about when you're planning on settling down and choosing a particular aspect of academics versus private practice is, are you the kind of person who's going to stay in private practice or academics? I mean, after writing all these papers, I thought, oh, definitely I'm going to stay in the university setting, do plastic surgery, attendingship, and just be that part. But I looked at and I weighed the importance of what does private practice do for me and what academics does for me. And you have to really think about that because that ultimately makes a difference. What can you do and where do you do it at? If you're going to be in academics, chances are you're not going to be in a town of 25 to 30,000 population. You have to be in a larger university metropolitan area that has a different environment in itself. Everybody's a subspecialist. I like to make fun of the ophthalmologists, not that they're because they're here, but oftentimes you have two ophthalmologists, one specializes in the right eye, one specializes in the left eye. And and then there are some who, I remember once I was calling in for a trauma case and there was a piece of bone stuck in the globe. And I asked the ophthalmologist who was on call, who's a well-known ophthalmologist in our area, and I said, you need to come and take a look at this. The bone is sticking inside the eye. And he says, but do you understand I'm a retina specialist? And I go, is that in the eye? He said, yes. I said, then you need to take care of it. I mean, where else are you going to find somebody who specializes? But subspecialty is a big challenge. In the rural community, in some of the suburban community, your subspecialization may leave you out. So you need to be a full-round physician. You have to be, if you're an ophthalmologist and a subspecialist or a plastic surgeon who just does fingernail reconstruction, then you really need to gauge where you're going to be able to practice. You have to be able to take care of everything and everyone, not just a specific area. So that makes it different too. As you were asking about a fellowship earlier, if you are subspecialized, super subspecialized, and only pediatric corneal transplantation, then Duluth, Minnesota is probably not the place for you. Whereas if you specialize in, general pediatric care or pediatric cardiology, then being in a place that has large birth population is probably more appropriate. So finding that little niche for you is also important, but it has to make sense. Your specialty has to make sense, but more importantly, your lifestyle has to make sense. Although you have to decide where you're going to be in rural, suburbia, inner city, or metropolitan, all these practices are not the same. You will not accommodate yourself in any particular situation unless you have that personality. As you know, most medical doctors in general and residents are very not open. They're very quiet. They usually don't say anything, and it's usually under different circumstances where they, come out as far as who they are. So when you approach that aspect, you have to think about when you're going into private practice, does private practice am I the kind of person who can actually go out and meet other doctors, meet other physicians, meet other hospital personnel, and actually communicate with them effectively to build my practice? If the answer to that is no, you need to be in academics. Just cut and dry. I mean, if you're the kind of person who can only take care of patients, then you have to think about a self-sustained structure that will actually provide you the patients that you need to actually get out and work. If you're the kind of person that likes to talk, can get along with almost any of your patients, can get along with all your colleagues, private practice may be a good option for you because you can reach out to the community, reach out to the staff, reach out to the people that are around you and actually build your practice. The two are usually different. Many people like to think that they have a lot of similarities, but they don't. The advantages of a private practice in a community where you can survive, meaning not exactly a metropolitan community, but in a community where you can actually make wave and be successful, you have to be business savvy. You have to understand the principles of economics. Most of us study chemistry and biology, the two of the most boring subjects you can before they go into medicine, right? Because that's what you have to do. But you need to take the understanding during your period of practice and medical school and understand the business of medicine. Dentists, when dentists are in training, they learn exactly how to take care of patients and how to bill and make the financial stability needed to make a business work. We don't do that in medicine. We just show up and start seeing patients, and we don't even know how to use the codes. These books that Obama and many of his, I won't start on Obama, sorry, but many books that actually teach you about the coding mechanisms, you have to learn them. So when you're in your residency, that's what you should be doing. When you're in medical school, you should learn a little bit about it, but in residency, you should be aware about it. Because when you get out in the academic world or in the private practice world, you need to know how to do it. More importantly, in the private practice world, if you don't know how to do it, you're not going to be making any money, which is a problem. So you have to be a little business savvy, nothing that you can't learn. You can read about it, you can go to your own professional conferences, but you have to do it. And you have to really hire somebody, if you don't have in your own structure already, somebody who can help you do that. You have to understand that currently the healthcare market is changing. And for convenience sake, many people are choosing now to go into an environment where they get a salary. They don't have to worry about anything. Their malpractice, which has only risen for the past 27 years, is taken care of by somebody else, and you don't have to worry about it. You have to take that into account too. If you're a gynecologist in Orlando, Florida, you might be paying $230,000 in malpractice. If you're a gynecologist in Duluth, Minnesota, you're paying $86,000. If you're a plastic surgeon in Los Angeles, California, you're paying $180,000. If you're a plastic surgeon in Duluth, Minnesota, you're paying $22,000. Now, these small things don't sound like a lot, but when you have to end up coming up with the funds to pay for them to keep in practice, it becomes a significant problem. So you have to calculate a lot of that when you're deciding whether you're going to be in private practice or not. But more importantly, once you've made this decision and you can accommodate your life in the environment that you want to be in, then you have to think about what are you going to do other than take care of patients. You spent your whole life pleasing your attendings, your chief resident, your medical students, your patients, but never yourself. You have to have some type of reward, not financially, but spiritual reward. And that's where being private practice for me comes into play. I think that when you look at the disadvantages of private practice versus the advantages of private practice, a lot of them are the same. Being your own boss is a problem sometimes because you want to take a vacation all the time and you realize that the account balance book in your office tells you need to work a little harder. Because in order to actually go and do the things you need to do, you have to have knowledge of A, how to make money, B, how to make a practice work and sustain itself, and C, what do you do outside of your work structure. And for every individual, most of us have our own different thought processes, but many of us are actually involved in IMANA, which is actually hosting this. For those of you who know this, those of you who don't, we encourage you to be part of IMANA. What we do is really about who we are and who you are. And when you're out going back to practice management, it can be a lonely business if you don't have like-minded people with you. And much of our organization, just like your own private practice and your academic practice, is about who you are with. Majority of us are not just academicians or private practice people, but people who have a similar kind of spirit. One that actually wants to do something outside of the world of just practice, which is dawah, giving back to everyone else. So how do you decide? When do you decide you want to live, do, or what you want to do? When rotating in the field of choice, you want to decide, spend time with general surgeons, medicine doctors, pediatricians, anesthesia people who are in private practice or academic practice. Get a feel for what their lifestyle is like. Oftentimes you can find more about what you want to do in life by watching others. You don't have to really reinvent the wheel. You know, some people have to do one particular residency and then may not realize that they didn't like that residency. And you know, you can pray all you want, but really the most important thing you have to do is pay attention and ask the right people. Sometimes asking that right question will do everything you need to do for moving forward. One of the things you can also do is rotate in both rural and metropolitan venues. If you actually spend the time in small clinics as well as larger clinics and in private practice and academic practice outside of what your normal requirement is, you'll get the experience you need. You can figure out in 2 weeks, a week, sometimes a few days, exactly is this something that you want to do. And the way you perceive your practice is to think about yourself in 10 to 15 years. Do you see yourself in that particular situation? If you cannot see yourself in that particular situation, there's a reason for it. Think about that long and hard. And you have to think about what your personal requirements are. You know, as most of us do, we always plug in IMANA because IMANA is who we are and who we are right now. IMANA is an organization of Muslim medical doctors, students, residents, and allied health professionals, including dentists and various and sundry other physicians who actually travel not only in the US but around the globe trying to help and deliver medical care as well as education in different parts and sectors of the globe. You have to find a niche that makes you feel better in giving back to your community. And all of us do in different ways, some at the local level, some from things as small as feeding the hungry in our local communities or masajids, all the way to delivering health care locally, internationally, nationally, doing what you can to make a difference. I mean, we've spent our time over many years involved in, once my practice had been set up, was to actually go out, and I was done. And there's only so many patients you can see. There's only so much money you can try to earn. It doesn't matter how hard you work in life. If you don't understand the healthcare challenges that are currently present and the time constraint that actually affects your life, you won't be able to move forward. So setting up the work that you need to do for yourself is very important. We found that working with our own colleagues and friends, Muslims, not only in the United States, but non-Muslims alike, internationally and nationally, can make a significant difference. This is one of our more recent mission trips that we just came back from, which was last March. This is a bilateral cleft that we took care of. 25, 30 minutes of our time. We actually started this particular mission trip, and there's many that we do for different reasons. We have Haiti, as Dr. Mustafa Haq was telling you, many of our team has gone to Haiti. This is our Safe Smile team with Imam Majid, our spiritual guru. There's 4 of us, Dr. Pervez Malik, who was here earlier, Labib Syed, and Dr. Ismail Mayer. The 4 of us was in 2002. It was just 4 of us, and in 2012 it was 20 of us. And next year we have probably at about 20 a minimum, maybe even 24 to 26 people going. When you set the trend, you suddenly realize that you can enjoy your workplace and you can enjoy your activities thereafter. For the most important thing that I find whenever you're doing any type of humanitarian activity is to try to blend what you can do. In academic settings, sometimes it's a little bit more challenging because there are certain time constraints, financial constraints, and physical constraints. You know, if you're a professor at the University of Arizona in plastic surgery, you get a total of maybe 3 to 4 weeks off a year. You have your family constraints. You may not be able to do a lot of the other things, but you can find some time to do the things that you want to do. Those of us in private practice, you know, we can change around our structure, not only just about for our patients, but actually for the activities that we want to do. And that makes a big difference. You know, this is a group of doctors who went to Gaza. This is from an orphanage that Dr. Mayer's team and Dr. Galeria's team went on to try to help salvage some of the challenges that they have in Gaza itself. Some of these pictures are kind of disturbing. War is another problem, but you can bring your own service and your experience if you have the facility and capability with the skill set to use internationally. It's very important. It's very important to be able to try to reach out and do what you can here as well as abroad, and incorporate that in your normal practice structure. So finally, the advantages of the private structure: financial security, family stability, humanitarianism, and direct clinical patient care involvement with clinical or side research opportunity. Despite the fact that we're still in private practice, I still write papers, I still present. It's not I've detached myself from the academic environment. Actually, if anything else, I pay attention more now than I ever did before. And it's one of those things that can make a significant difference for you too. There are also some side missions, which obviously have golf involved. This was a burn mission we went to in the Philippines, which I go every other year. And you meet some wonderful people. We have some people that we take cross-culture. One of my friends is Hindu, one of them is Catholic, and one of them is a Buddhist. And we all work on the same travel schedule, and we still work together doing different mission trips, but to try to help others. This is actually the Tagaytay volcano in southern part of Manila. And that's all I have. Thank you.